The instructions that I'm about to give is the first aspect. There are 4 primary aspects into teaching the Merkaba. This is the very most important instructions of all. It is the easiest one to tell you. It is the hardest one to do. No amount of understanding of the science of the reality, or the Merkaba, will create a living field around a person unless they are in the state of love. Your heart chakra must be open, and you must be feeling love in order for this to take place. I guess this is the rules of the game that God laid down. It's just the way it is. And there are 2 heart chakras in most of the chakra systems that run up the body are thought of in terms of octaves. The Hindus, Tibetans. But there are really 13 chakras running up the body, 12 in the body and a 13th one above the head. One of the heart chakras is on the octave, and one of the heart chakras is on the pentatonic scale. One's on the white notes, and one's on the black notes. And right here, at this point right here, just slightly above the sternum, can everybody see this place right here? This is the place of the first heart chakra, which is actually on the pentatonic scale, which is the heart chakra of universal, unconditional love for all life. This would be one way to put it. It's love for everything, for God. There is one that's higher in position, which is on the octave, just slightly up. It's 7.23 centimeters above it, right up here. And that one is for a portion of the reality. Love for one person to another, or love for something, love for music, love for something, but not for the entire reality. And it is the lower one down here at the sternum that is, for our purposes here, that is we need to focus on. And so before you ever begin into the meditation, one would sit down and become still and clear their mind of all the world by just being still and relaxing and letting go of all your thoughts and your feelings, and to the best of your abilities, which is all you can do. And then to begin to focus on that chakra, the 5th chakra of your body, and to open your heart. And it's a feeling. When you're in love with someone, that is a feeling, a sensation, an experience. And it is also an experience to be in love with God, or all life, everywhere, or the entire reality. And so, to the best of your ability when you do this, is that you must first begin to open that area of your energy field, and to feel love for everything and everyone, with no exceptions at all. Of course, we all have certain people we don't like, and certain things we don't like and stuff. It's the way we are. We're in a polarized world. So all you can do is the best you can, and you begin to just focus on opening and gratitude for being alive, and just whatever the words or the images that help you to open, you work with those to open your heart and to open it up. Once you actually feel that feeling and you're in that state of love, then you can begin to do the practice. And I'll just say right now, to the degree that you are able to open that chakra and to feel love for all life, will be in direct proportion to your success with working with this meditation, if you choose to use this meditation, of course. And so there is when I walked around the room here, I said, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God. And it's a Muslim or a Sufi prayer. And there is another Sufi sound that actually has been used by many other cultures around the world, because they've discovered that it works. There is a sound that is a very simple sound that will resonate in that particular chakra of your body. And the sound is Hu. It's spelled H-U, usually in Sufism anyway. And the sound is Hu, Hu. And so what I'd like to do right now, for about 5 minutes or so, just is to all of us to begin making this sound together. And you can get creative with it if you want. That's okay. And to have a good time with it. You don't have to be real serious about it. But to feel what it does to your body and to this flow of energy that's moving through the screw. At the end of that, I will bring the sound down in intensity and we'll say the prayers. Great Spirit, O Holy Trinity, Mother, Father, Child God, Creator of all life everywhere. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you've given us. And thank you for this circle and for the love that flows through this circle. For without this love, we would never be able to see you in the eyes of every person before us. And may all the beings of light who wish there to be love and truth and beauty and trust and harmony and peace throughout the cosmos, may those beings be here who work with us and have responsibility with us. May they be here to help us to open our hearts and our minds so that we can understand and make this real in our lives and live it and breathe it and make it real here on earth today. And one more time, the angels of light who never separated from God, those who have helped us and protected us and guided us and never let go of us during our time of darkness. We are all connected to those realms. We are there. We are one with them. And I ask one more time that you go within yourself and ask your angels to be here, to be by you, and to help you during this time and the times that are coming, the incredible times of transformation that are about to occur on earth. Please ask them to be here. We ended up with the Call Mystery School ending up in 3 different areas of the world, Egypt and Peru, Yucatan, and Tibetan area, up in there. And at the Egyptian one was the male aspect of this grid that was going to be created around the world. And the people who started, or the primary person who started that particular school over there was Ra, sometimes spelled R-A, sometimes R-E. And he was another one of the immortal beings who had found out about immortality during the time of Atlantis. And you see, the history of Egypt is so weird. The same, I started to talk about it before, but you can't really understand it unless you actually study it. But it's the same way with Sumeria. Both of these two cultures, both Sumeria and Egypt, they just appeared out of nowhere, and no one knows where they came from. They just appeared in one day, and with everything intact, like a full civilization intact. We always, they don't tell you about this too much in the history books, but if you study it, you'll find out that who it is. In fact, they have a special name for it in archaeology. It's called stair-step evolution. And the reason it's called stair-step is because in Egypt, what would happen is a particular subject would come forth, like writing, for example, would come forth in its full bloom with no evolution. And so there would just be this sudden straight-up evolution and up to another plateau. And then there might be a little bit of time, and then suddenly another subject would be known about in its full bloom. It would just go straight up with nothing coming before at all. And so there were these like stairs, and which defies all understanding of how this could possibly be. And we got it lit up again now. And so this continued on, and to this day, archaeologists have, especially Egyptian archaeologists, have no explanation whatsoever. Just zero, zip. All they know is that's what happened. If you ask them how, they don't know. But what was going on, and the reason behind all of this was this. It's very simple once you understand what was happening behind it. Underneath the Great Pyramid, in that little temple village, city under there, was about 1,600 fully aware, self-aware beings who, which was part of only the McCollum Mystery School branch in Egypt, became known as the Tot Brotherhood. It was Tot Brotherhood because Tot was one of Thoth's sons, his only son, actually. And Tot stayed with Ra, and it eventually became known as the Tot Brotherhood. Even today there's the Tot Brotherhood there, but it's the superficial ones who are the guys outside, and they protect the temples. They're the protectors of the temples. But there's the hidden inner Tot Brotherhood, which are the immortal beings. And they, after the destruction, when the poles shifted and the whole thing collapsed in, and we dropped in consciousness, and we started eating food again, and a lot of other things that we didn't do before. The minds were erased. There was nothing there. And so they had to sit for a very long time and wait. They had to wait for almost 6,000 years while we regenerated ourselves and recreated much of our patterns and started. It's like someone who has amnesia. You got to start learning how to read all over again and all these other things like that. So the mechanisms were fine. They just had been erased. So they had to wait. And then about 6,000 years went by, which happens to be at another point in the orbit, which is, I didn't really talk about this, but in this cycle, we talked about these two places here as being special. But there's also these places here, which is approximately 1/4 of the way around, and then you got this other 1/4 of the way around. Right here, there's really 4 places. These are the major ones, and these are the minor ones. These are also places when dramatic change can take place, though not usually as often or anywhere, but you could have a pole shift there as well as over there, but it's almost always going to be here. But things can happen here and here too. And then waited until they got to this one here. And they also had to wait until they evolved further enough. And so it was about 3,800 BC when we were, which was almost 6,000 years ago from now. when they felt that things were ready to go. At which point, two groups, there was not the top brotherhood, which were Syrian-based, which were the father image of us. The 32 members of the Syrian base were connected directly to that particular group. And so it was not only the Ascended Masters, but they had the direct guidance of the 32 members of the Syrian race that originally started it. And pretty obviously it was the Anunnaki from the 12th planet who began the one in Sumeria. Now I believe these two started at the same time, and I think eventually this will be proven, and I'll tell you why this in just a few minutes. Though at present they separate them by 500 years. They say Sumeria started first and then Egypt started 500 years later. I really disagree with this strongly. And I think they started at the same time, but from two different sources. Really the same. It's the same. It's like mom and daddy, but it's the same family, same parents, but different ones. And so the Anunnaki came in and simply gave the Sumerians the information. Just said, here it is. And meanwhile, the top brotherhood and their approach was a little different because the Anunnaki gave it to the Sumerians really fast. They just gave them a big blast of the whole thing. I mean, it was just like if suddenly you came in here and a ship comes down, and you're never the same after that. I mean, you just totally picked up and remember all this stuff and all that kind of thing. I mean, we were changed fast. The Egyptians were changed very fast, but a little bit longer period of time. What the top brotherhood was doing was they were sitting there waiting until all of them until they saw that we had gotten to the right place and we were in the right place of the orbit and everything else. Like all those things were right. And then they sent either 1, 2, or 3 members of the top brotherhood, which were immortal beings, out to either the person or the group, whichever it was that had reached the particular level that could accept what was being told. And they would come out looking like them and dressed like them, and would go out and just tell them, remind them of something they already knew. But of course, it sounded brand new to them, but it wasn't really new to them. They had known this at one time before. And they told them. They gave them the language, they gave them the various things. They give them various aspects, and then go back under there and wait and let them absorb that. And then when they get to another level where they're ready, then another one would come out and give them another group of this. And so what would happen is you'd see these things going like this in evolution. It's like, like hydraulics, for example. They would just suddenly know everything about hydraulics. They'd know things about hydraulics that would take thousands of years to evolve through normal ways of thinking, and yet they'd know it all in 1 year. Where did it come from? How did they possibly know this stuff just like that? But they did. And that's what was hidden underneath this, is you had these two very intelligent races, the Anunnaki and the Ascended Masters along with the Syrians, that were injecting the information directly back into these two cultures. So that within a very, very extremely short period of time, in one lifetime of one person, they went from 0 to 90 miles an hour, and they were full tilt on. There was a problem that began to develop specifically in the Egyptian side. And it was not quite, it wasn't nearly, I don't even know if it was a problem on the Sumerian side for sure, but it definitely was one on the Egyptian side. The Egyptian culture began as two countries. It began as a polarized state, whether you had Upper and Lower Egypt. Now, in their memories, they still had the memory of what it was like before the poles shifted, which everything was reversed around. the sun rose in the west and set in the east, and polarities were different and everything. And so the whole country, you really do, what you think and what you feel creates your reality more than you may know. And they created a world where Upper Egypt was to the south and Lower Egypt was to the north. And the Nile runs from the south to the north. It's the only river in the world that does. The major river that runs from south to north. All the rest of them go the other way. And even there, if you go to Dindara, which I'll show you as a thing, which is the heart chakra in one of the temples in Egypt, there's a place up there where you'll see the astrological signs on the ceiling. They look just exactly like the ones you would recognize today, in precisely the same way and everything else, except that they're moving the other direction. The heavens are rotating in the opposite direction that we're used to seeing them move. That wasn't the problem, though. The problem is they started out in this polarized way, and the problem developed around religion, not around the understanding of language and the sciences and these kinds of things. And it was religion. It was the understanding of God that was the problem. Now, the religion of that time was the Osirian religion. And Osiris was not an Egyptian, he was an Atlantean. And he was the first person, according to Thoth, that graduated from the Nicol Mystery School out of Atlantis. The people that were in Sumeria were teaching how to do how to be an immortal being, and here they are, eon after eon, sitting there teaching it, and they couldn't get anybody to do it. It went for somewhere around 20,000 to maybe as long as even 30,000 years, I'm not really sure, before they got one person that could figured it out how to do it. I don't know why, they just couldn't get them to do it. And they finally got one person, and that one person's name was Osiris. And the second person and the third person was Isis and Horus. It was really kind of simultaneous. But Osiris was the one that made the direct attempt. And the story of Isis and Osiris is really the basis of Christianity. It's very, very similar in a lot of ways. Isis and Osiris were brother and sister. They were also married, and they also had another brother and sister, which was Seth and Nephis. So Isis and Nephis were sisters, and Seth and Osiris were brothers, and Seth and Nephis were also married together. And at one point, Seth killed Osiris. Now, you may take that as a negative act. I don't know if we can judge this or not, whether or not Seth was actually the bad guy in all of this. He may have been, it may have been that they something that was more or less agreed upon between the two of them. This is my feelings about this, because just of the understanding of what was going on here. But that's my own feelings. But anyway, he killed Osiris and floated him. In the story has all been transposed over into Egyptian times. So he was put in this wooden casket and floated down the Nile. But of course, it wasn't really the Nile. And then Seth and Nephis went and looked for him for a long time, and finally found him and brought him back. And when he did, Seth then took the body and cut it into 14 pieces and distributed them all over the world, so they would never find him again. And so then Isis and Nephis went around searching for these pieces to bring them back, and they found 13 of the 14 pieces. They found everything but the phallus, which was the 14th piece, which has to do with the creative flow. And so they went to that temple, one that we showed you, remember that long one where I dropped down into and went into pictures. And it was there that they put, according to the story, but of course that could not have been this, because this was 36,000 years, or almost, actually 36 and 6 is, well, I don't know how long it was. It was tens of thousands of years before that in another place and time. But they put together 13 of these pieces together and recreated his body. And then it was Thoth, Chikatep, who went in and recreated the phallus, gave him back his life force energy, and he then became an immortal person through this process. And the process was that he began in one state, the first state, and then he was killed and separated, cut up, and then his pieces were put back together and resurrected. He resurrected from there. And it was done also through Immaculate Conception, which is another element in all of this, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. It was done through the Holy Trinity. We'll have to discuss what that was all about at the right time. I'll come back to this story a little later at another time when we talk about Immaculate Conception. But anyway, the procedure that Osiris used to make the transformation from one level of consciousness to another was corresponded with the chromosome patterns that are in every cell of your body. And in those days of Atlantis, they didn't need to write these things down, like I described to you before about a memory. So that was understandable by other people having to be done. But when it got to Egypt, it had to be written down because writing had been introduced, which caused us to grow, as we'll talk about later, another part of a skull up here, and it changed our body height and changed our perception of reality and everything just by introducing writing. And let me see. Here it is. So in the Egyptian times, they had to put it into book form, and they put it into this book, which was called the 42 Books of Thoth. But there were 2 more books that were set aside. There were 42 plus 2 books, because they started with 42 plus 2 chromosomes, starting from the first level of consciousness, like the Aboriginals. And the chromosome levels, or the pathways, were called nephers, and they were represented by people with either human heads or animal heads, and they had various symbols over the top of their heads. This one was Ma'at, which meant truth. And each one, they all had their different meaning, and they represented movements in the Great Void, which we are about to talk about a little later. And so the study of this was important to the Egyptians. However, when they developed as 2 countries of Upper and Lower Egypt, they had 2 kings and 2 ways of looking at things. These 44 different nephers took on one image, 44 different images actually, in Lower Egypt, and 44 different images over here in Upper Egypt. And then, to complicate it more, the people began to think that each one of these nephers with a small g for God, they gave it a big old capital G, and started saying that Isis was God, or Sekhmet was God, or Anubis was God. etc. like this. And each little community started polarizing all the way down the whole thing. This is where your cults all began to take place in here. And this just kept getting worse and stronger and stronger and worse as time went by. And the Ascended Masters and the top brotherhood were sitting there going, we got to do something about this. There's only one God, and they won't realize this. And they knew that the plans that was laid down at that time, if it was not changed, that by the time we got to here, we wouldn't possibly be able to make it through. And it has affected us strongly, even now. And so they decided that they would try to intervene directly again to make another change in this, to guide us toward one God, the understanding that there's only one. And they waited until the 17th dynasty, so they waited a while before they, I was hoping it would correct itself on its own, but it never did. It just got worse. So by the 17th dynasty, Thoth, who was elected to be the one to do it, went to the king of Egypt, and they were kings up until the 17th dynasty. They weren't pharaohs until the 18th dynasty. And they went to the king of Egypt, and his name was Immortality II. Is that right? Yeah, Immortality II. And they went to, and Thoth walked, according to him, walked right into the room to greet Immortality II, which probably just blew his mind. And because I'm sure that even he thought he was just that guy on the wall all the time. He wasn't really a real person. And convinced him that he should do something that no king would normally ever do. And that is that he would not allow his son to be king, but to interject someone else to be king. So he probably convinced him real well. I don't know what he did, but he got him real sure this is necessary. He explained to him the whole situation. And so they agreed. And so then what happened, and you can check this out, and this is all outrageous, and there is controversy over certain aspects of this in archaeology, but this is what's written down in many of the books. You remember Tiya and I from Lemuria? Well, they're still here. They have a real nice house in Egypt now. It's a round house. It's probably the only round house in all of Egypt. It's a round house with a wall down the middle, completely separating both halves. So you have to go outside and come back in on the other one. Yeah, really. And on one side of this wall, it shows Imhotep looking like a normal human being. And on the other side of the wall, it shows him about 14.5 feet tall with his very large head, looking like what you're going to see here in just a few minutes, showing that he was able to go back and forth between those two states of being. But anyway, these Ay and Tiya were two of the most powerful people in all of Egypt. Everybody knew they had been there forever, and that these people didn't die. And they had a great deal of respect, and I would imagine a little bit of fear. They were pretty well feared in a way. Though not that they did anything. They were very loving people, just that they were so unusual. And so what was decided is that they needed to bring forth certain things, and the first step that they decided to do was that they were going to bring an actual Christ consciousness being in a real fourth dimensional Christ consciousness body and have that person walk on the earth. That person would be called the Pharaoh. And what Pharaoh means is that which we will become. That's what it means. And that is exactly what they were trying to do, was to give you the example of where our consciousness was leading to, that we were going to go through metamorphosis from this state to another one, and we would appear differently. We would still be somewhat human, but very, very different in a lot of many, many ways, physiologically as well as consciously in lots of ways. And so they wanted to put it right into the Akashic record, the example, so that it would be there all the way down until this time now. That was real important to do. And then the next step after that was there was another step also agreed upon at that time, which I will explain in just a moment. So the first thing is they wanted to get this person walking out on the surface of the earth. Well, to create a Christ consciousness being, you can't use the chromosomes of an ordinary people. You have to have 46 plus 2 chromosomes. So you have to start with that level. And so who they chose was Tiya and I. These people are very old. You know, I mean, they're very old no matter how you want to look at it. You know, they weren't kids. And they were asked to have babies. And so they had this baby. And the baby then was interjected into the lineage and became Imhotep III, or the last king of Egypt. And then when Imhotep III grew up and became an adult, he had a baby. And that baby's name, of course, was Imhotep IV, which we know more as Akhenaten. His name was Akhenaten. And he became the first pharaoh of Egypt and the first pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, which there was a dramatic change between the 17th and 18th dynasty. In the meantime, while Imhotep III was having this little baby of Imhotep IV, Tiya and I had Iya and Tiya. Names get confusing. Tiya and I had another baby, and that baby's name was Nefertiti. And so Nefertiti and Akhenaten were indirectly brother and sister. And again, when we talk about Immaculate Conception, you'll see that there is this thing about brothers and sisters, and that's been going on all over the world for a long time. And I'm not trying to judge it or anything else. I'll just give you the information at the right time. You make up your own decisions about it. But there seems to be something around this. And so they had this other little baby. And eventually Nefertiti and Akhenaten grew up and they got married. And they became the first pharaoh and queen of the 18th dynasty. Now, Akhenaten did not look anything, hardly at all, like a human being. For one thing, he was 14 and a half feet tall. Nefertiti was 10'6", I think it was, somewhere around in there. And they were, as you're going to see here in just a little bit, they were very unusual people. Before I get into that aspect of things, I want to talk about what's up on the screen here. This is Abu Simbel, which is at the base chakra at the end of the bottom of the Nile. Corresponds to the base chakra of the spine. You see these very, very large statues there. Here's some more, same place. They're standing here, which is a better one to see. You can see the heights of these people, and you see these very high ones. These beings here are about roughly 55 feet tall. We never think, we think that this is it, that our height and our face is kind of the standard of the universe. Kind of, you know. But actually there are many, many different heights of consciousness or bodies out there, from little tiny ones to very big ones. And in human consciousness on Earth, there are actually 5 different heights of beings that have lived and do live on Earth at various times, and they correspond with 5 different consciousness levels that are possible, because when we reach the 5th one, the 55-foot high one, we leave totally this concept of reality. It's a stepping stone to somewhere else. And this is demonstrated in Egypt in the sense that every king that has ever lived in Egypt all had 5 names representing these 5 different consciousness levels. And these 5 different heights of beings are, the first one is about 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall. Could even be 5 feet tall. It's a range around in there, usually. And then the next height, and that one has 42 plus 2 chromosomes. The next one is the one we're in, and we're about 5 feet to 7 feet tall. We all fall somewhere in there, usually, pretty much. There's exceptions. There's always exceptions. But, pretty much. And we have 44 plus 2 chromosomes. The next one goes up quite a bit. It goes 10 to 16 feet tall. And they have 46 plus 2, and that's where Christ consciousness first enters in. And then the one after that, which I know very little about, which is another stepping stone consciousness like this one, it's another disharmonic consciousness, is roughly 30 to 35 feet tall, and they are 48 plus 2 chromosomes. And the final one is between 50 and 60 feet tall, which averaging about 55 feet, and that one is 50 plus 2 chromosomes. Right now, we are on the second level, and so all you're ever concerned with in consciousness is that which you just came from, the past, present, and future. The one you just came from, the one you're in now, and the one you're going to. It's like the leaf plants saying, I just grew 3 leaves, now I'm at 5, and I need to go to 8. And so we have three consciousness. We're concerned with the aboriginal, 42, we're concerned with ourselves, and the one we're going to. And so these other 2, these really tall ones, we don't need. But the Egyptians left all the actual sizes of these beings sitting all over Egypt. And no one knows why they did this. They created actual rooms for these people to really, literally walk around in them, because they literally did walk around in them. The Hathor race, for example, which is from Venus, are 10 to 16 feet tall. They're the most evolved race in this solar system. They live 4th dimensionally on Venus. You won't see anything coming up. Well, you will see some things. Our governments have already seen structures on Venus that has been documented clearly. But primarily they're on the 4th dimensional level of Venus. And for example, you'll see a room here with like an 18-foot high ceilings inside of here, and then right next to it you'll see a room with 8-foot ceilings, right, just side by side. So you've got a room, and all the temples have these very, very high structures moving around, so that very big beings can walk through those things without being influenced by them, and having very special places for them to go to. Here you see an ordinary person here and a 55-foot tall one sitting beside each other here. This is the king and this is the queen. But what archaeologists say is, well, that's because the male's more important. That's why they did that. But I mean, it has nothing to do with that. They're talking about levels of awareness here. They're not talking about who's more important. And this, by the way, is this thing on the Eve theory, where they have traced, biologists have traced, using the DNA, the overlapping patterns of all the various races in the world, all the way back to a single person in this very specific valley that is talked about in the Sumerian records as where we all started. And the time that they give is about 200,000 years ago. And according to Sitchkin, it was 250,000 years ago. He's guessing. According to Melchizedek, it was 200,207 years ago, to be specifically, when that took place. And even the timing is extremely accurate. And this is Tiya. That's what she looks like. That's a statue that was made of her when she was in Egypt. But she looks young like that all the time. She never ages at all. So she's an ancient person. So if she was walking down the street, you would just never, how are you going to know? You don't know. You never know. And this is Saqqara, which is where the Egyptian archaeologists say that it all began. They say that before Saqqara there was nothing, absolutely nothing. That it all began here. And Saqqara is an incredible place. It's really big, and there's rooms that are 200 feet under the ground and all kinds of things. It's an immense complex that stretches for miles around, actually. This being the primary center. This is the first pyramid built in Egypt according to archaeologists. Of course, the Great Pyramid was already sitting there before that ever started. And but I tell you, this is not it, and eventually they will prove this. This is the writing that just came out of nowhere. This is a better one over here. It's very perfect, clean, straight to the point, clear writing that first came out at Saqqara, and then very soon got more and more complex and muddled and not as clear, and kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. By the time the Egyptian thing collapsed, it was degenerated greatly. This little thing here is a rod, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It has a rod with a tuning fork on the bottom, and it has a 45-degree angle at the top, which you're going to see that they would put back at this chakra, strike the rod, and they had this other thing that they could tune the rod with, and a flail that they could turn and tune the sound going down the spine just exactly, and get exactly the frequency moving through them to tune them perfectly, along with sexual energy that they were using. At the moment of orgasm, they would direct the flow in such a way that they could put themselves directly into a very specific universe. And it was a high degree of understanding that they would use Tantra. Though it was only part of what they did. And these were the tools. They not only used this one, but they used this one and this one. This was the egg of Metamorphosis. These are all talking about resurrection here. This is the key of life, the Ankh, which is the secret to how they directed the flow of energy so that they would become immortal. And I'll actually tell you exactly how to do that in here, though I'm not going to teach it, but I will tell you the key. You can get the rest of it from your higher aspect. And this I don't quite understand how to use that one there. This one here is an interesting symbol. That triangle with a triangle in the middle, that's the hieroglyphics for the star Sirius. Whenever you see that one, they're talking about Sirius. You see it down here again, over here.
Triangle at the bottom, little one inside.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a little triangle inside of it. What are you talking about?
Inside the pyramid, is at the bottom of the triangle.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a triangle, and then there's a little one inside. Oh, is there a little one inside the little one?
No.
No.
Where it was.
No, it's just this one. It's representing Sirius A and Sirius B.
Let me know if Jerry's got a golden mean or a Fibonacci.
This? Well, that's neither golden mean nor Fibonacci. And I can't remember all that. It has to do with the crown of Upper or Lower Egypt. I can't remember. But I don't remember what that is about. this is what's going to destroy that history that they're saying about. You see, the Egyptians tell you that it all started about 6,000 years ago, really less than that, in Saqqara. And if you present them with information of something that's older than 6,000 years, they'll just walk away from you. They won't talk to you. Refuse to talk about it or anything. And the reason is because the Quran says that creation began 6,000 years ago. And so they can't contradict the Quran. And almost all the Egyptian archaeologists, all the archaeologists in the world are all Egyptian. There's only a few. And the ones that aren't, they're not going to get access to Egypt if they start saying things are older than that. I mean, you just can't buck it. It's just like you can't do it. And what they've done, there are pyramids that are much older than 6,000 years old, but they won't let you even get near them. In fact, they've placed military installations around all of them, with these big high fences and machine guns and everything. They will not let you even get near them. And then they tell you all they are is just nothing. They're just mud mastabas, is what they call it, made out of adobe, and there's nothing there. Not even worth looking at. And you won't even find any photographs of them, hardly at all. You can't get anything on them. And anytime you try to get any information on them, they just, they're not important. It was before it all began. And so I want to say, well, let me just see one. No, can't see one. Well, let me just walk up near one. Oh, well, okay, maybe. We'll let you walk near one. And let me give me $7,000 to just get near one. You know, this kind of stuff. No pictures, nothing like that. And I kept bribing people and everything else. I finally got them to take me to this one, because this is the only one that isn't on a military installation. And the reason is because there was little villages that were all around it, and they couldn't do it. And so you got to go through people's backyards to get to this thing. I mean, it's incredible. And I finally, after a week of talking to people and begging and paying people off, and I mean, I lost a lot of money on this in the beginning. It was an expensive thing. But I finally got there, and they tell you that there's nothing to it. And the reason is because there was little villages that were all around it, and they couldn't do it. And so you got to go through people's backyards to get to this thing. I mean, it's incredible. But I finally got there, and they tell you that there's nothing to it. And so they bring me up on top of this place where it is, and I look around, and instead of being just mud maswa, these are old, and they don't take care of them. They want them to fall down. You've got these huge, the whole things were covered with these huge granite blocks. I mean, it was real pyramids. And you look around, and for 10 miles around this complex are pyramids everywhere. It's just totally a forgotten place. And there's a ramp that goes down this thing, just like in a huge ramp going several hundred feet down to the into the Nile. A pyramid is a water pump. I don't know if you know this. It's a pump that will pump huge amounts of water without any moving parts in it. They've been able to reproduce these in the United States. And this one's still functioning. It's 200 and something feet above the Nile, and the baby fills up with water. They got to pump that out to get in there every time. They pump all the water out to go inside of it. It'll fill right back up with water again. And the whole interior is nothing but geometrical images all over the walls. Well, as you're about to see, geometrical images is a higher level of writing than hieroglyphics. Much higher. And only they just say, oh, it's just geometrical images, they don't mean anything. I mean, they just really play it down. They don't want you to even say that it's anything. But while I was there had been a team of approximately 30 American linguistics experts who had finally got permission to get in there. And I happened to be on the airplane with one of them writing back. And he was so excited. They felt that they had finally cracked the code of language. They believed this pyramid held the key to all the languages of the world. And knowing what I know, especially with what you're about to see here real soon, they very well may be correct.
Where was that?
Huh?
Where?
It's the name of it, although I don't know how to write it in Arabic. It's called Lahir.
What's
Yeah. It's about, I don't know, it's not even a village, it's just a bunch of houses. It probably does have some kind of name. It's about miles north of Saqqara. And someday this place will, but if they tie this one down, this pyramid is about 500 or 600 years older than Saqqara. Well, if they establish that this was the beginning place, then you find that the two, that puts Egypt at exactly the same age as Sumeria. These are some of the kinds of things that they found there, which are these these six-petal little flower of life pattern things that came out of that era. These sharp-pointed things. This is Osiris here with this green skin, and he's holding the tools of resurrection. You see the rod with a 45-degree little rod. Here's a frail, the hook, and the little tune for it down at the bottom down here. This is Anubis. He represents the star Sirius, and again, he's one of the Nephers. One of the plant, you'll understand here in a little bit, but he's one of the keys to how to move in the great void, to create immortality. And I don't know why I put that slide there. I probably wouldn't have. At this point, that's where I usually talk about her being the mommy of Nefertiti and everything. Then this is Akhenaten and Nefertiti and one of their daughters. And it's not drawn to perfect scale. You'll see the perfect scale in just a moment. Akhenaten had a purpose. He had a few purposes to come out in the world, and one of them was to change the religions of all these cults that had happened all over there to a single religion so that they could know that there's only one God. And so when Akhenaten took power, and he took power under very extraordinary circumstances, there was actually two kings in Egypt and two cities in Egypt. They built a brand new city called Tel El Amarna. And there's a stele there that is in the middle of the city. And if you took a satellite view of Egypt, it is in the precise, absolute dead center of the country. They have no idea how they got so accurate. I mean, it's right down to the, it's perfect. And they marked the center and they put the city right around that. And the city was made of only white stones. And they waited until the city was built, and then when it was finally built, then Akhenaten and Nefertiti left Thebes and came over, and the country was actually ruled from two cities and two kings simultaneously for a while. That had never happened before. And then they finally let the transition go, because this was a real transition period to a new way of being. And they gave the image of the sun, the solar disk, as the image of God. Now, it isn't that he knew that the sun was not God, but they were dealing with the people that used statues, that they worshiped statues. They had to worship something. And he was trying to make a transition from there. And so when you make transitions, you sometimes make compromises. And so he picked the image of the sun, which is a very good image. If you've got to pick something, at least that's the light. It's all the life and everything that comes from the sun comes to us here. The geometry of the sphere and everything, there's a lot of reasons why. Prana, from a third-dimensional point of view, prana comes from the sun also. Though from fourth-dimensional points of view, prana is anywhere and everywhere. And you see the rays coming from the sun holding the arc to the nose, to the breath. showing that eternal life comes from the prana and from the sun, it's not a perfect religion that they were getting here, for sure, but it was much, much better than what they had before. And this, by the way, is the lotus flower, which was the symbol for Atlantis. It was the Nepal Mystery School that brought the lotus to India. It's written in India that they did that. And it says the Nepal Mystery School did it. It says right in there. There's several writings about the Nepals that were there even before Buddha, long before Buddha. But here you see them out of the vase and dying because Atlantis was dead and dying. This is the actual stele that came from. And now what you're going to be seeing is the actual height differences. True. Now look at him. Look at his shape, his long skinny neck, little tiny waist and everything. What you're looking at is a very close image of what he really looked like. But I'll show you one here. Now this, when Akhenaten took over, he said, first of all, number one, we have to be truthful. We can't hide anymore, because there was a lot of conspiracy and the kind of stuff that's going on now. A lot of that stuff. It would be like a president coming in and saying, okay, all this stuff, we're going to end all this stuff right now. We're going to really end it. And so Ma'at became the primary symbol of the 18th dynasty. Ma'at is the one with the wings with a feather over her, and Ma'at means truth. The essence of truthfulness. And so he changed all kinds of ceremonies, and everything got changed. He went around and re-geomassed all the temples, which they really got pissed at him for doing that. And he even changed the art form, where you start seeing, he says, draw it, paint it, make the statues just like you see it. Don't lie. Because to him, when you start making these things, when you start making these people that are standing like this and all these distorted things like that, that's a lie. Because you didn't draw it like you saw it. So he says, all your art has to be just like a photograph, because you knew about photographs, but you gotta, just like what you see, that's how you do it. And so you begin to see the art of the 18th dynasty looks rather modern. But it doesn't look like anything like you ever saw before. Just suddenly this whole new art form came up, which included the statues were to be made just exactly like the person would see. And here is Akhenaten. This is in the Cairo Museum, and according to faith, you are now looking at exactly what he looked like. And this thing to the top up here is about almost 15-something feet. He was 14 and a half feet tall from his head to the top of his body. And you're looking exactly at the body, this high waist way up here, coming out with his long, sloping things. His knees are much lower, and his skinny little legs at the bottom. And he had two hearts in his body because Sirius has two suns. Most systems are polar suns, and you reflect what's going on in your sun more than you know, I'll tell you. What's happening, the internal processes and things that are going on in there, and the nature of your system that you're in, your bodies reflect this. So anyway, where were we? So this is what he actually looked like, and this is Nefertiti, which was found when I'll explain in just a moment here what happened to I should tell you now, I guess. No, not the right moment. And this is Nefertiti. She was found in this bust of her was found in Tel El Amarna. They just totally destroyed the city. They removed every rock after he was gone. They didn't want the world to ever know that Akhenaten ever existed. I mean, they went around and they got they combed everything and destroyed everything they could. They completely removed an entire city, stone by stone, and spread it to the world. They went around to all the murals and throughout all of Egypt and erased any mention of Akhenaten. Because, and she's asking why, because he was considered the great heretic, because he was the one that destroyed their beloved religion. And so they all hated him. You see, the priesthood hated him, because the priesthood were all the millionaires and the powerful people. And he said, you don't need them anymore. God is within you. And the priest said, what? I won't be able to drive my gold chariot anymore. And they did not like to hear that. And then the military was the most powerful military in the world. They were ready to just take over the planet, and they could if they were ready. They were incredible. And Akhenaten was a pacifist, and said, no, you can't do that, and made them all come back onto their shore, and said, you can't do that. If we're attacked, okay, but other than that, only for defense only. But he was also a very good politician, so he put a lot of the military people in political power places to appease them. But basically, they did not like him because they wanted to go out there and cause hell, and he didn't let them do it. And then the people didn't like him because they all liked their little religions, and they were really into it, and they really believed them with their whole hearts, even though they were going in the wrong direction. It wasn't true. They believed it was true, and they didn't really like this new religion that it was, that everybody was supposed to follow. It'd be like George Bush coming in, making all our military come back onto the United States, and saying, okay, all the religions are wiped out. There's going to be the Bush religion, and these kinds of things. I mean, there was a great deal of extreme. People were really, really uptight over this, and the top president knew that this was going to be incredible, but they had to try. And so they destroyed this whole city. I'll tell you what they did to him in just a moment. They destroyed this whole city, and this was found in an underground room that they didn't know was there. And that's how this survived that. And a few things survived that were hidden in places. So there were a lot of people that really did love Akhenaten and Nefertiti and saw the beauty of what they were trying to do. And so but it was a relatively small group compared to the rest of the country. And now underneath his hat, she's always considered like this very beautiful person, and I mean she is, but she doesn't have a normal skull. She has a much higher skull here, which you can now see. And she's not wearing clothes. That was the other thing, is because they felt that clothes is not being truthful. And so they didn't wear clothes except for ceremonies and certain things like that. But the rest of the time, you just didn't wear clothes. And to just be open on every conceivable way. There are a lot of things about her. If you notice, these huge ears, long, skinny neck, and if you can see, the waist is right underneath her breast. It's not down low area. It's just like right underneath there. And this kind of a pot belly thing is, it's just part of their nature. This is two of the sisters. This is a little detail of something. Now, what you're looking at is just like an actual, this is just what the artist was seeing here. Again, this really high waist, these little tiny legs underneath here, and these huge skulls, this long neck. Nefertiti's skull was not anything as big as Akhenaten's or the daughters. This is an actual one of one of the older daughters when she grew up here. And you can't see the angle. I'll show you the angle in just a moment. But that skull is really big. It really goes back there. And these ears are enormous. Sound and sound vibration and voice sound is a real big part of their lives. Very much like it is with the dolphins. Sound is a very crucial aspect with them also. And so their ears and their hearing sensitivity is way, 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 way over what we've got going right now. But here you can see, this was another one. You can see how big his skull is. It goes back there like that. It's because they were interpreting reality from a totally different way, and it required more brain mass back in there to do this. The amount of brain mass is real important. It's like the biggest brain in the world, other than dolphins, whales, and humans, I think is the gorillas or whatever they are. They have about 750 milligrams, I think it is, of brain mass. It takes approximately 1,000 milligrams before language is developed. A little baby, when it's approximately a year and a half, 2 years old, or somewhere around in there, that's when their brain mass reaches 1,000 grams. That's what it is, 1,000 grams. And that's when language starts happening. So what they suspect is that when a gorilla ever reaches 1,000 grams, that it will start talking, just like we do. Coco? Because you talk? Sign language. The dolphin, when we're an adult, we have about 1,500 grams average brain. The dolphin brain is 1,850 grams. They have a much bigger brain than us. And they reached 1,000 grams about 30 million years ago. They had language 30 million years ago. And so obviously the dolphins are a little bit further along than we are. I mean, in terms of, in a lot of things. They have certain areas of their brain that we don't even know what the heck they are. We don't even know what they do. We don't even know what they're for or anything.
What does the archaeologists say about addiction?
They don't know what to say about this. They really don't have any idea at all. Oh yeah, they do. I know what they do say. That's what they say. They say they're sick. That they got this disease that caused these bodies to be distorted. That's why. That's what they say. Yeah, it was a real big thing. It just was. Yeah, it was a real big thing. It was a really big. They were really big. I mean, if somebody 14 foot came crawling in this room, it would definitely be a big thing to you, I'll tell you. The rest of them too. I mean, they were afraid of these guys. There's no doubt. They were really afraid of them. And anyway, this is one of the teenagers here. Look at this baby.
How many grams do you think they have?
Oh, it's going to be, it's probably, judging by the size, probably about 2,500 or something. They're about double the size of our brain.
They didn't grow hair.
I don't think they had hair. In fact, most of the vast majority of the ETs, if you're familiar with them, they usually don't have hair. It's kind of not necessary kind of thing. Huh?
Beard?
Oh, well, yeah, they tend, that was a real male macho thing, but they really felt that it was important to have this beard right here. The rest of it they would shave, but right here they wanted this long beard. But it was a style. I mean, even Queen Hatshepsut, she was the first female queen that controlled Egypt. And that was such a powerful thing that she went around wearing a beard. You needed that beard, boy. It's real important. But you can see how big this skull is. I mean, for a baby. You can see also why their hips went way out like that. I mean, they had to have these really wide hips to deliver that kind of skull. You got to get that thing out of there. And look how big that ear is compared. It's almost as long as the distance from, the whole face of it. It's huge. I mean, if you were holding that baby, the first thing you would say is, "This is not human."
You look the same way. Some of the Egyptian birds, they used to oblongate the head to mimic at one point.
She was talking about some of the Egyptian births, they would oblong the head. This was true in all three areas of both Egypt, Peru, Yucatan, and Tibet, is that when the babies would come out, the normal human beings would try to tie off with these tight bands to make the skull grow out like this, because they wanted to mimic the ascended ones.
That would find the feet of the Chinese. Yeah, the feet. That's different.
I don't know about the binding of the feet. That's totally something different.
But you said their lower legs were
Oh. Well, she's talking about binding of the feet that the Chinese used to do. I don't know if that's related or not.
Female, that's a well thing. What happened to no question?
Yeah. What happened to no questions here? Okay. Keep going. I'll give you some questions here in just a moment. In fact, maybe I can get them to you real quick here. Anyway, there's another one. This is King Tut, and he was only 18 years old when he took over. He took over directly after Akhenaten and Nefertiti. They don't know where he came from. He's not. He has no lineage. They don't know where he showed up or how he came from. He wasn't from Akhenaten and Nefertiti. They don't think, and yet he's still got this bigger skull and these big ears. He's obviously part of it. He was in telepathic communication with Nefertiti and ran the country through her. She ran the country through him, put it that way. See, what happened was, in the very, very end, this is the part you kind of need to know, is the populace of the population of Egypt, the military and the priesthood all got together and said, let's get rid of this guy. But they couldn't kill him, because you can't kill an immortal being. There's nothing you can do. You can do anything you want. Nothing will work. You'll find this out at one point. You can't shoot him, you can't stab him, you can't do anything. Nothing will work, because they have a field around them that will just not allow it to take place. You can't poison them, you can't do anything. So they did something very, very, very interesting. It was really ingenious. The actual story goes that they poisoned him, because the people who were watching it happen and who wrote it down saw him drink this stuff, which they thought was poison, and they saw him fall over, and he looked like he was dead. And they went there, and he had no heartbeat. And after I read all this stuff, I asked both. I said, "What happened?" And they said, "Well, it was close." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And they said, and he said, they hired 3 black Nubians who were like magicians. And they made this substance, he says, which the closest thing that he could describe to me is what they use in voodoo, where you drink this stuff. It doesn't kill you. It makes your heartbeat and everything go down so slow that you look like you're dead. And so he said what they did is they had this whole sarcophagus created and planned, and when he fell over, then the physician came up and checked him and says, he's dead. And so everybody thought he was dead, and they immediately carried him out and put him into the sarcophagus and put this magical seal, whatever that means, around the lid and put the lid on. And he then, they never embalmed him, they never did anything. They just put him in there and got rid of him. And took him somewhere and hid him. And he remained in there for 2,000 years, approximately, until the little bit of the seal broke free, and then his spirit got out of that body and left.
Whose body was in the sarcophagus?
They've never found it. They've never found any of their bodies, not any of them, except for King Tut. And that was planned. They've never found, he's the only one in all of Egypt from the beginning of time until now that they've ever found a tomb that was intact. And that was part of the deal. They wanted all of those things to be found. They wanted them all to come out into the world because they have very special vibrations. They have the vibration of what he was teaching in it. It was I'm sorry, they poisoned Akhenaten. But it was not poison. And now here's what happened with him. I need to say one more thing and then we can ask questions on this. This is Akhenaten's house. It's in New York. This is the Lima Museum in Peru. And in there, just one more quick thing. These are other skulls that have been found in there. There were these huge skulls that were found in Peru. I took the wrong angle. If you got the right angle, you'd see it's the same huge skull, the same kind of thing again. And this is one of my teachers, Kalu Rinpoche. I like to give you his image. He's a Tibetan Lama. He was one of the teachers that I really, really love a lot. And if you can see him, he has a real similar kind of thing. His neck is a real long, skinny neck. This is a collar. His neck is this long, skinny neck that comes up like this kind of thing. But those same skulls have been found in all three of those places. Yeah. Okay. I want to tell you what happened. And this is the important part of all of this. Let's see. What Akhenaten's purpose was, first of all, was just to show you what you're going to become. And then the second of all, he started the school, and the school was called the Egyptian Mystery School of Akhenaten, the Law of One. And the school was a school of immortality, of resurrection, and it was only functionable for 17 and a half years before they had him drink this thing. So he only had 17 and a half years to complete something that he had to do, and he did complete what he needed to do. The next phase of this is that they needed to not just bring an actual form of what we're going to become, but that they needed to bring someone out onto the surface who was half and half. And I'll explain that in just a moment. Part of us and part of the next level. And so to do that, they had to get a very special group together. And that's what the purpose of the Egyptian Mystery School was. And so they began this training. They selected from the people that were the followers of Akhenaten, that believed in him, people who had done the 12 years of training of the left eye of Horus. The left eye of Horus is the feminine, which is controlled by the right brain, is the female psychic side of things. And so the temples that run, starting at Simbel, that run all the way up there, which are equivalent to the chakra centers in the spine, each one has a different aspect of a school, and I'll talk about this more in a little bit too. And they were there to teach about all the emotional and psychic aspects of the right eye or the left eye of Horus. And so they taught about tantra and sexual energy and emotional body work and fears and all these kinds of things. When someone had been through all of that training after 12 years, and they were at least 45 years old, then they were eligible to go to the right eye of Horus, which is through the Egyptian Mystery School that I just mentioned. And out of this, they had a few hundred people that were selected and went through the school. It took 12 years to get the right eye of Horus. The right eye of Horus had never been given before. So the walls is the left eye, and the missing information, the other half of the information, the male part of the information, was only written in one place in Egypt. And they don't know where that is because it's down underneath. It's leading way underneath the pyramids. And so that information was never given to them. They never had the full set of what was necessary. And so it was finally given in this school. At the end of 12 years, they then could begin to process the people through an initiation in the Great Pyramid, which I'll describe exactly what they did. And so it means that they only had 5.5 years to reap the benefits of all this work that they've been doing for all this length of time. And this guy must have been the world's greatest teacher, because in 5.5 years they got almost 300 people to realize immortality. And that's amazing, considering the Nepal Mystery School in the 60-something thousand years or whatever it was, Atlantis was 65 or 70,000 years, and I don't know when they started the Nepal Mystery School there, but in that entire period of time, they only managed to reach 600 people. He did 300 people in 17 and a half years, which is incredible. But of course, if you got a 14 and a half foot person sitting there, I guess you'll listen to him and probably really believe what he has to say. But anyway, he was very successful. They were almost all women, almost totally women, and this group then went back underneath with the Todd Brotherhood and remained there until this took place in about 1350 BC, roughly, give or take a few years, and they remained there until about 500 BC. And then in 500 BC, this group as a whole got up, left the Great Pyramids, and migrated over to a place called Masada, Israel. And they became known as the Essene Brotherhood. The Essene Brotherhood, the core of the Essene Brotherhood were these 300 primarily women who were really Egyptians and were immortal beings, had already obtained immortality. And they then created another school around them, another mystery school around them, which contained both males and females, which were the outer aspect of the school, which were ordinary people trying to understand immortality. And Mary was one of these people. Now, if you're Christian, you can just accept this or not, or whatever you want, but this is, I got to say it because this is what I believe. Mary was one of the inner core. She was an immortal being before Jesus was ever born. And she was Egyptian, and she was part of the Egyptian school. A statement in the Bible that could be interpreted many ways, but when God was talking about his son, he would say, what did he say there? He says, "Out of Egypt will come my son." And many have said, well, that was the time when he went back to Egypt, because Jesus lived in Egypt for a long time. And they said, well, that's what they meant by that. But it could have been interpreted in another way also. But anyway, according to Phyllis, Mary was an Egyptian. She was a moral being. She came from the original school, and she was an Essene. And that Joseph was also an Essene, but he was not an immortal being, and he was from the outer ring. And they crossed the two rings. They crossed the immortal being they crossed immortality with immortal mortality, and it opened the way for a very special spirit to come here, who has a name that I don't want to say, a very beautiful name from somewhere else. And he was one of the most advanced souls that this universe has ever created, and who came from a level of existence totally beyond our imagination at this point, and came down to this extremely low level of life to live a life, who we call Jesus. And it was the cross between Mary and Joseph, between the immortal and the immortal. And so he started out as the Son of Man and became the Son of God. He started out as a mortal person and transmutated into an immortal person and gave the example out to the world. And if you really start looking at things like baptism and all the principles of resurrection and everything, you'll find that these didn't start in Christianity, but all had their roots in Egypt. And even some of it, baptism, even further back than that. So, again, you don't have to accept that, but I have to say it. And so now we have a person who was teaching resurrection, the same basic principles of Egypt from the very beginning, only who, again, you can't just talk about it, you've got to do it. And so you got to actually live it or pursue everything. It's like a lot of people, and I don't mean to put them down in this way, but a lot of people who teach sacred geometry and what this is about, that you get reams and reams and reams of showing it, but then giving no way to bring it in to make it real, no way to ground it into the experience. You got to have that. Without that, knowledge is completely useless. It has no purpose or meaning. And so that's what they were doing, was they were having someone live it and go through the whole process. And so now Jesus gave the final example of what the next step of all this was all about. And so I'm going to leave that there at this point. And we'll ask questions, and we'll just do this for a little bit. I'd like you to ask. Last time what happened was there was only a few people asked questions, and a lot of people didn't get to ask questions, so you get one question, I'm sorry, and then you must give it to someone else. So, who's got that?
Behind you.
Who's behind me?
We have to start at the back this time because
Okay, hand it in the back. Those guys never do anything. Well, those guys in the back know everything.
Would that be in the Chinese pyramids?
Probably. See, we've got a whole another level of consciousness and awareness and information in China and Tibet and all over in there. There's pyramids over there. My sister, who's been all over China, my sister is real famous in China, and they allow her to go anywhere, just about. I don't even know if it's just about. They allow her to go anywhere she wants. And she said that she's been taken to places. She's been to Egypt 22 times. And she said that she's been taken to places in China that make Egypt look like nothing. And yet the rest of the world doesn't even know it's there. It's totally secret. And they've got pyramids all over the place, and they completely deny it, that they're even there. They won't, even if you try to say them. And there's some of them that we finally got photographs of and everything else like that, and they'll say, okay, all right, that one's there. You know, one of the most beautiful pyramids in the world is between the Chinese-Tibetan border. It's the largest pyramid that we know of in the world. It's a solid white capstone. It looks like it was made yesterday from the people that I've had an eyewitness of this. And it's got big, solid white sides with a solid crystal capstone on top of it, going to a sharp point. It's in perfect condition. And there's the doorway into it is open, and you go into this thing, and you go through this thing into this final room, into the middle of this big room. There's no words anywhere, there's no writing, there's no pictures, there's no nothing, except for one. And when you go into the middle up high in the front wall, this is from an eyewitness that was in it, there's only one thing, and that's the flower of life. It says it all. If you know what the flower of life is, you just said everything that you could possibly say in this least amount of words. And that one, and the Tibetan government completely denies that's there, even though people have been there and photographed it and everything else like that. If you call them, and we try to get the precise location and everything. We went 6 months with them trying to get it. And in the first, I don't know how many months, they just said, it doesn't exist, forget about it, there's no such thing. And our government had photographed it from the air, and we finally got, and I talked to one group. It takes 6 months to get to this thing. You got to really prepare, because you're going through uncharted, unmapped country. You got to have food and everything. And when you get there, you got to get back. So you got to really time it. And the second group that I talked to, they got there. They got right to the rim of the valley. They could see it sitting down in the valley, but they had to turn back because if they went in, they would all die, because they wouldn't have enough food to get back. We're talking about really high and cold, so there's no food, there's no way of getting back. And it's only out of the snow, it's buried into the snow. It's only out of the snow for 3 weeks out of the year. And it's hard to see because you got a white pyramid in snow. So, but these are the kinds of things that do exist out there, and there's really a lot going on over there. But the Chinese have really tried to protect it, and I'm glad they have. I'm glad they do. The Tibetans, the Egyptians do the same thing. They, from what we know about in Egypt, you could about triple that on what's hidden. And the Egyptian government knows a great deal of where this stuff is, but they're not going to tell you. They're not going to open it up. They wouldn't do it unless they were forced to. They don't see any reason to bring that out purposely. What's real interesting after that, who would you think they would trust, of course, to make the transition between that dynasty and the next one, is they made Ay and Tiya king and queen, because they were the only ones they tested. So they were king and queen during the transition, and then when Seth came in the 19th dynasty, then Ay turned it over to him because he didn't really want to be king, but they had to make that transition over to and then when Seth came in, he immediately turned it back into exactly what it was before. They erased everything and started right back over. And Akhenaten was then called something exactly what Jesus was called. He was given the name the criminal. Same name that Jesus was called on the cross later, the criminal. And the worst king that ever lived. But Nefertiti and none of the sisters and daughters, and all of them, were ever found, not anything. However, about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, they found 2 things in Tel Armana, which was very heartening for me. First one was they found some more burial caskets, and they opened one of them up, and inside, right over the top of the head, where the person was looking up, was the flower of life. I had not been able to tie that to the 18th dynasty before, and so I was glad to see that one. But then they found another casket, which they don't know what to do, and it's sitting in the basement of the Cairo Museum right now. But they found this big casket, and they opened it up, and there was the bones of a 7-year-old boy who was 8 feet tall. 7 years old, 8 feet tall. And they don't know what to think about that, but it's physically sitting in Egypt right now. They don't know about the skull. I got this through one of the Egyptologists out of Egypt, and so I didn't get to see this with my eyes. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. That casket. Gotta have the stick. Who's got the next question? Do you have it? Who's the next one? She asked the next question here. And then you're next after this one.
What was the difference between Akhenaten putting something into the Akashic records and the pattern that Christ put into it?
Well, Akhenaten was showing that which we would become physically. We're actually going to go through metamorphosis of that. Jesus was showing the pathway out from where we are here to there. So that they were working together. The 2 patterns were both necessary. Do you understand? It's got to go back to her. Put the tape on here next after that.
You were talking about
It's on, isn't it?
It's my understanding that he was the son of Akhenaten by a normal woman, by an ordinary woman, because he and Nefertiti only had females.
That's true. There were 7 daughters. Do you have any written? I've never been able to find any
Nothing written, no.
Yeah, I'm in pure straight science. As far as I know, and everything I've written, they don't know where King Tut came from. They have no direct proof of where he came from.
You said he was in telepathic communication with Nefertiti.
I believe that's true. There's no proof of that, of course, either.
Right.
When you were talking about Jesus, you said at least I think you were talking about it. You said, I don't want to say his name. And I just wondered what you're referring to. If you can tell us a little bit about that. And also, as far as Jesus being a culmination of Joseph and Mary, mortal and an immortal, it's always viewed that they never conceived in the normal way.
They didn't, that's right.
But yet for it to be a culmination of the both, it is from both sides of the equation, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll explain that in just a little bit. When we talk about immortality, I'll explain what they did and how that took place. But what was the first part of the question? Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Well, his name Jesus is an earth name. He has another name that's much more ancient, and I don't know if I have the right to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. No. All the names that you're going to know of are all earth names, and I don't have the. A lot of people have other names that come from other places, and they may or may not want that discussed, and I just feel that not talk about that. Okay, we got one more question here. Let's see, asked here. We're going to have.
Have you any information on why Osiris was depicted having a green face and then Akhenaten had a blue face?
Akhenaten had a blue face?
When he met Mut.
I think you mean that on the, I don't know, I don't think that Akhenaten in reality had a blue face. Though Osiris was always depicted as having either a green or a light blue face. And I think that's because he was dead when they got him. And they were resurrecting him literally out of the dead. I think that's what it is. He's sometimes depicted with white also, as having a white face.